Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our annual advisor training for 2018. So let's start with the agenda. So the agenda today will be, we'll be going through the role of the compliance department. We'll be discussing anti-money laundering and your responsibilities, privacy legislation and privacy disclosure form, client complaint policy and regulatory inquiries and your responsibilities, agent disclosure, the privacy disclosure, needs analysis, documented notes, reason why letter, and the code of conduct attestations. Some of these, for those that have been with us for a while, some of these are repeated. For those that are new, some of this, it's new material. For those that have been with us for a while and it is being repeated, we are required by the different agencies to repeat on an annual basis the definitions and the training so that things don't go amiss, misunderstandings don't happen, and it's fresh and forefront as to your requirements. Particularly FINTRAC requires on an annual basis that we conduct a training for anti-money laundering to ensure that you understand your obligations and your reporting requirements. So to start today, very briefly, we'll talk about the compliance department at Canada Oil. I am Mona Mann. I am the Chief Compliance Officer here. I am also designated as the Chief Anti-Money Laundering Officer by FINTRAC and the Chief Privacy Officer through the Privacy Commission of Canada. My contact information is listed on the screen. At any time, if there's any questions related to compliance or with regards to this training, please feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I would be more than happy to reply. So getting right into it, anti-money laundering. What is money laundering? Money laundering is defined as any act or attempted act to disguise the source of money or assets derived from criminal activity. Essentially, it's the process where dirty money is transformed into clean money. And what that basically means is money that has been accumulated due to criminal activity is then put into the economic system to cleanse it, so that the source of the money becomes disguised so that when it comes back out into the system, used for purchases, for other expenses, no one is questioning where that money came from. So that is considered money laundering. Anti-money laundering is the systems, processes, policies, and procedures that organizations, financial institutions are required to do and have in place to prevent such activities. Money laundering is an offense. So in Canada, money laundering is an offense punishable under the Criminal Code of Canada. So there are criminal ramifications, criminal charges potentially possible if you are caught laundering money. Money laundering offenses involve various acts committed with the intention to conceal or convert property or the proceeds of property while knowing or believing that these were derived from the commission of a criminal activity. Now that is a lot of words, but if you know that a client is trying to conceal the source of the money through money laundering, or if you yourself are trying to conceal the source of the money, that is considered money laundering. So in the essence of our business, if a client comes to us and we are aware that they are trying to conceal where the source of the money is for the product that they're purchasing, that is participating in money laundering. Even being suspicious and not reporting the suspicion is considered an offense. It's not considered money laundering. You wouldn't be the individual laundering the money. However, if you fail to disclose suspicious transactions, there is a penalty involved with that as well. And it could include both a monetary fine and possible jail time. So it is critical and essential at this juncture that I mention, anytime you come across a transaction that seems somewhat fishy, shady, gray, or suspicious, please feel free to give me a call and say, Mona, I wanted to run this by you. This is what's happening. Am I right to be suspicious about this? So your level of responsibility as an advisor, your onus to report that suspicious transaction and then any ramifications of it not being reported to FINTRAC end once you report it to me. So in other words, once you let me know that you're suspicious about something, you've done your duty. It is now my turn to then evaluate if that needs to be reported to FINTRAC. Once we report it to FINTRAC, the duty for Canada Loyal is done, then it's FINTRAC's responsibility. So that is how you can ensure that your obligations in terms of money laundering have been met, is to ensure that you are reporting anything suspicious to myself. So there are 3 stages to money laundering. The stages are placement, layering, and integration. Placement is the actual physical placement of the cash into the economic system. For example, an individual brings in a wad of hundreds, comes to a teller and deposits it. That's placement. As an MGA, we have a policy that we do not accept cash. So we are actually not at risk at the placement stage of the money laundering process. Layering, however, is where we are most susceptible to any and all money laundering risks. The greatest risk for advisors lies in the layering stage, where insurance products can be used to clean dirty money. For example, you have a client that comes to you and they start a policy, a product. I'll stick with just a product. And they've started a product and they've taken the product and now they're your client. And then 6 months later, they come with another product and they're like, I want to switch from this product to that product. A little while later, like, you know what, I've changed my mind. I want to either go back to that product or I want to do a different product. What they are essentially doing is layering. Now, there are valid and justifiable reasons for clients to do what they are doing. Absolutely. However, if it is suspicious and it does not make sense in the grand scheme of things, that needs to be reported to myself so I in turn can report it to FINTRAC. So the layering stage is where we are most susceptible to being privy or part and parcel to the money laundering process. The final stage is called the integration stage. This is where they have been successful at placing the money into the system, disguising the trail of the money through the layering in the system, and now they're ready to integrate it back into the system. So to take the money out and actually use it for things like a house, a car, expenses, and so forth, or just to say, you know what, I have clean money now. We facilitate this, or are at a risk of facilitating this, because we allow the layering stage to happen without proper supervision. So what do we need to do? We need to keep an eye out for anything suspicious. Third-party ownership. I just want to quickly stop at the first bullet today. So a typical scenario we have at Canada Loyal is an individual writes or asks for an insurance policy or an insurance product under his or her name, and then the check comes from his or her company's name. That is considered third-party ownership. Even if the individual, him or herself, is the owner 100% of the corporation, it is the corporation that has the interest in the policy, and it is the owner, because it is the owner, is third party, sorry, it's the corporation that's making the payments. So it is important, if you have a client who is going to be making payments from their company account, which is 100% owned by them or not owned by them, that you complete the third party section of the insurance application. Insurance companies, FINTRAC, they all look at that as third party ownership. It is critical to understand that there could be something suspicious happening there, or it could just be a mom and pop shop and they're now getting coverage on themselves for business continuity purposes, and the company is going to pay for this expense. That is all legitimate, that is all fine, that's all fair, none of it suspicious. However, that section on the insurance application where you have to complete third-party questions does need to be completed and answered. However, going back to third-party ownership where it could be suspicious, it could be that the insurance policy is being taken out on one individual, a corporation that has many other owners of it, or one other owner of it who is not related to the insured person could be making the payments. There is some suspicion. What is the relationship? Why is this company paying for the policy premiums for this particular individual? That would be something that you would need to escalate. Insurance coverages exceeding what would be considered appropriate or suitable for the client, considering their financial situation. That's a suitability question. Needs-based selling would ensure that whatever is being sold to the client is appropriate, it's suitable, it makes sense for their financial goals and their financial picture. If it doesn't, red flags should go up. pressure tactics in selling and placing policies. If there is any pressure into please place this, please do this, why are you asking questions? I don't have that information. The other company's not asking for it. All of that puts a lot of pressure on the advisor to get things done. That is also a red flag. Why the pressure? You have to question, why are you pressuring me? We have policies, we have processes, we have procedures we need to follow. Why are you not understanding that this is normal and acceptable? Odd requests. One of the examples I gave earlier, you have a policy that you're writing up for somebody and they say, that's great, perfect, done, here's the check, all is well. Could you send that, all that documentation or further correspondence to another address? And the other address happens to be a PO box in a different province. That's just strange. So an odd request like that would also should also bring up some red flags. All suspicious transactions need to be reported to the compliance department. They need to be reported to myself. Your responsibility in terms of reporting your responsibility with regards to reporting suspicious transactions is fulfilled once you report it to me. So please bear that in mind, that it's not only corporate liability. Canada Loyal isn't the only one that would be responsible. There is also personal liability. So they could come after the advisors. The advisor should have notified us. In turn, we should have notified FINTRAC. And when it comes to personal liability, it is again monetary with possible jail time as well, depending on the offense. A few more red flags. Doesn't want mail sent to the home address. Uses same address but changes the recipient's name. Is very interested in how we do our thing. Sorry, excuse me. Very interested in knowing how our policies work, our procedures work, how our internal systems work, what controls we have in place. That would be a red flag. Home or business phone has been disconnected, or there is no such number when contact is attempted after the insurance product is set up. They insist on a quick transaction. Hurry up, let's get this done. Again, the pressure techniques. Frequent transfers among products. Again, that's the layering that I was referring to earlier. If it makes sense, it makes sense. Certain things just make sense. If it doesn't make sense, then please give me a call so we can discuss. There's an inordinate delay, in presenting incorporation documents. So they've sent this to you, we've got it all here, and now they're just dragging their feet in terms of incorporation documentation. We do need that. FINTRAC has upped the ante on the requirements in terms of understanding the identities of those that own corporations. And all identification is either foreign and or newly issued. So that may be something to consider as well. When must you escalate? Politically exposed foreign person. I will define that in the next slide. Should your client be a politically exposed foreign person, that needs to be reported to the compliance department. It's required on our end. We monitor the activity of that individual that's been identified. Anytime something doesn't seem right, if you find that something doesn't sit right, a red flag has come up or something of that sort, please do consult myself. Whenever the answers or other information available cause you to be a little concerned. And now it continues with the application or in-force product. So I just want to reiterate that. It could be with the application, some red flags come up, or it could be with a product that's already in force. So you have this insurance policy running for 3 months now, and they've come back and they've said, you know what, I need to change my address, change the address, future correspondence goes out to this particular PO box out in a province that's different than where they reside. That is still a suspicious transaction, even though the transaction has already occurred. That is a suspicious activity that also needs to be reported to FINTRAC if there are concerns warranting the suspicion at that time. Maybe they're moving out there, maybe they have family out there. That's all legitimate and valid. That does not need to be reported. But if it's out of the blue and it doesn't make any sense, then yes, that also, even if the product is in force, it still needs to be reported. So what exactly is a politically exposed foreign person? It is anyone who holds or has held any one of the following positions in a foreign country, and it includes their immediate family, which I have defined below. So insurance applications are particular about asking this question. This is a FINTRAC requirement, It should be on the insurance application. We ask that you answer that question there. Should you become aware that one of your clients is a politically exposed foreign person, then we ask that you let us know, let myself know, so that we are able to flag and then monitor that particular individual, because that is a FINTRAC requirement. A few of the things that advisors are required to do. If you come in contact with a suspicious transaction or attempted transaction, a suspicious transaction or attempted transaction, there is a report that you have to complete and fill. Now, having said that, if you come across a transaction that is suspicious and you decide to call me and say, Mona, this sounds suspicious, I'm not sure what to do, I will be completing the STATR, that's that report. I will complete it and forward it along. First, we'll have a discussion, make sure it sounds suspicious. If it's reportable, I will report it. You are not required to report it. However, if you come across a suspicious transaction and you choose not to have a discussion with me, the obligation to file that report becomes yours. Then you are required, if it's a suspicious transaction, to complete that report and report it to FINTRAC. That's the one report. The other report is called a terrorist group or listed property review. It is a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet available on OSFI's website, which discloses names of the terrorists that are currently being monitored and any terrorist organizations. On a monthly basis here at Canada Loyal at head office, we do a review of all new clients in the previous month, and we compare that to OSFI's Excel spreadsheet to ensure that we have not in our possession any terrorist property. If there is, we have to report that as well. So that is done currently here at Canada Loyal. If that's something your office wants to do, that's fine as well. But we do that here at Canada Loyal on a monthly basis. The final thing is the annual risk assessment. It is the annual FINTRAC risk assessment. I do have a template of that. We do that here for Canada Loyal on an annual basis. However, advisors are required to do that themselves. That is something that we at Canada Loyal cannot do for each and every advisor, but I usually do it towards the end of the year as a good reminder that their assessment needs to be done. It's a couple of pages. Essentially, I will send this out as well with a few other documents after the training today. The document needs to be completed, signed, dated, and kept on your offices for when FINTRAC comes to audit. If they do, they will be asking you for your annual risk assessment, and then you have to present that. There are low, medium, and high risks, defined as low, medium, and high. If it's considered low risk, it's low risk. If it's medium to high risk, you need to be able to identify what you or your organization is doing to ensure that you're mitigating the high and the low, the medium and the high risks. That's what that risk assessment is about. It talks about the types of clients you have, talks about what geography you're operating in, talks about what kind of products you're selling, just to get a general gauge or a general idea as to how risky the business that you're conducting could be and what policies, procedures, what safeguards you have in place to ensure that you're managing that risk. On a monthly basis, these are the reviews that FINTRAC requires you to do. New clients is the OSFI review that I was referring to earlier. We do that here on a monthly basis, so that is being done and completed. As long as, so the caveat actually before I start going through the list, if the insurance application is submitted through Canada Loyal for processing, it is being done here. Should you choose to submit an application directly to an insurance company, the onus is on you to ensure these reviews are being done. So going back to our monthly review, we have new clients, that's the OSFI review being done here. I do actually a documentation review for $10,000 in lifetime product premium. So if you sell a product and the premiums of that product over a lifetime of the product, so if it's a 10-year term, it would be over 10 years. If it's a term 100, it would be over 100 years. If the premiums are greater than $10,000 over the entire period or lifetime of that product, I do a review of that as well. It's essentially everything we do here basically, but as a review of that, spot checking to make sure that we have all the ID and the documentation in place. and related transactions. So if you have a client that comes in and they purchased a product last year, and then this year they've decided that they're going to purchase an additional product, that is a subsequent product purchase within a 5-year time span. That is considered a related transaction. FINTRAC requires that you note in your notes, in your file, your client file, why what's the reason behind the subsequent product. It could be as simple as financial planning. Needs have changed. They've had a new baby, they've changed jobs, they've lost a job, they've bought a house. Could be anything to rationalize, but there has to be a reason, a valid reason as to why they're coming back to purchase another product. The reason behind this, it goes back to the layering stage that I referred to a few slides earlier. We want to make sure that they're not just placing policy after policy after policy with no financial goal for the purposes of just cleaning money laundered money. So that's why related transaction identification is important and the rationale is important. I do pinpoint and I do isolate related transactions on a monthly basis, but that is what we need to do, is ensure that there's valid reasoning for that. And then politically exposed foreign persons, we have to identify them, and then we have to monitor the activity. Again, if that's submitted through us here at Canada Loyal, that information does come through onto my desk and I do all of this for you. If it is something you submit directly to the insurance company, then the onus is on yourself and your organization to ensure that this is completed. No changes to the privacy policy. However, I will review these as we are required to. A privacy policy is the management of personal information we collect. Anything personal, addresses, phone numbers, date of births, credit information, void checks, banking information, all of that is considered personal information. We have to ensure that it's always under lock and key, safeguarded, and that it's not being used for any purposes other than for which it was collected. So if you've got a void check, got the void check in the client's file, it is only being used to pay for the premiums for which the void check was issued. It is not being used to consult, to verify account information with the bank directly. It's not being used to get more information from the client, to know where they live, none of that. The purpose of the information gathered must be the purpose for which that information is used and nothing outside of that. You do have to obtain client consent. That's usually built into the insurance application forms. If you have any questions under the privacy policy, please feel free to contact myself and we can take it from there as well. You are required as advisors, I should actually point this out before I continue, to have your own anti-money laundering policy and your own privacy policy, and then your privacy breach policy, which is the next slide. You are required to have these in-house of your own. Now, we do have templates that we offer, and I will send out the templates for this as well in my email to everyone, but please be aware that you are required to have your own anti-money laundering, privacy, and client complaints policy in-house for when an audit, if an audit were to happen. FINTRAC will be looking for the AML policy, Fiscal will be looking for everything else. What is a privacy breach? A privacy breach occurs when the personal information we collect is lost or misused. Lost being a great example is somebody lost a briefcase. They were at a Tim Hortons. They had a policy that they were going to be delivering in the next day or two. The briefcase was left at Tim Hortons and it was stolen. So the policy was lost. It was a breach. We reported it. We got another replacement. All is well. Misused is not really understood correctly. If we, for example, take a void check that was given to us by a client to pay for policy premiums, we turn around and then use that to do a credit inquiry on the client. That is misuse of that information. That is considered a privacy breach as well. So be very careful. It's not just if something is lost or something has been exploited or used or exposed. It's also if it's been misused. So it's not used for the purposes for which it was collected. That is also a privacy breach. You need to contact myself immediately. We will have a discussion about the circumstances surrounding the situation, at which point we will report the breach if we need to, and then the next steps will be taken. The final bullet point there is, in the event of a privacy breach, those who are affected are advised, along with the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, if the breach is significant enough. Client complaints and regulatory requests. So we have client complaints are required to be submitted to compliance department here so we can review them. We have to keep a log and then we obviously let the insurance companies know the complaint's been received. One of the things that I found a bit of a trend that's been developing over the last year is regulatory requests. When you receive communication from a regulatory body, that information needs to be shared with the compliance department. It could be FSCO, it could be the MFDA, it could be it could be the Insurance Council out in BC. Whatever you receive, whenever you receive any sort of correspondence from a regulatory body that relates to an investigation, a complaint, or potential infraction, that needs to be shared with us here. We do keep a log of everything received, and then we obviously notify the insurance companies that with whom the advisor is contracted with of that inquiry. But that is normal process and procedure. Trying to deal with it on your own, that's not something that you can do. You have to report it to the MGA, but sometimes it helps to have another ear to listen to get advice from in terms of, okay, this is happening, I'm not sure what to do. That's a good point of contact as well. However, if that's not where we want to take the conversation, that's totally fine as well. But you are obligated to still report it to us here so that we can do what we need to do on our end. And then the bottom is just if you have any questions regarding that, what your obligations may be under the client complaints and regulatory requests communications, then please feel free to let me know and we can have that discussion as well. Disclosures. These are mandatory. You need to leave an advisor disclosure and a privacy disclosure with each client at every time that you make a sale. So if you see a client today and you see them again in 8 months and both times they've made a sale, they've purchased a product, you need to leave an advisor disclosure and a privacy disclosure on both occasions. So the advisor disclosure is personalized and one copy is left with the client signed while you keep one in your file. So you keep a copy of one that the client signed that they understand that there are no conflicts of interest or that there are conflicts of interest, but they're at least made aware of them. That is the purpose of the advisor disclosure. The privacy disclosure, you leave that with them. They don't have to sign it. You don't have to keep a copy in your file, but that allows them to understand what your policies and procedures are as an advisor in terms of keeping and safeguarding their information. We can help you with the preparation of these. We do have templates. I will send out those as well as a part of the final wrap-up of today's session in the email, where you will be able to see, you can modify them yourself, or feel free to give me a call and say, I would like to modify these as well. So we have a needs analysis in client files. Sorry, excuse me. Okay, so needs analysis. We have developed an in-house needs analysis form. So insurance companies, the regulatory bodies, the industry in general, is now requiring all advisors to ensure that their client files consist of documentation which justifies that they actually did a thorough check and understanding of the client's financial situation before making a recommendation. We have developed an in-house needs analysis form, which aids as a tool to help you do that. We recommend that you keep a communication log in which you're detailing and writing down all your communication and points of contact with the client. If the communication log is a template, which I'll again include, but if you do not like the communication template, then detailed notes also suffice. However, the days of, oh, it was the best thing at that time, but I don't know why I said it, or yeah, the client agreed and I don't have any notes, those days are gone. All insurance companies, all regulators, they're all looking for detailed files, trying to understand what was recommended and why. There is a reason why letter, which is a new development in the industry. I'll get to that in a minute as well. That needs to be done as well. So it's very important that your client file has documentation which justifies the reasons for your recommendation and justifies the action taken by the client. For example, you've recommended a universal life policy for a certain amount of premiums, and they're like, no, you know what, we're just going to do a term for a quarter of that amount. So why is it that you recommended what you recommended, and why did the client take what they took? It could be, again, totally justifiable. They couldn't afford it. they didn't understand it, they didn't want it, which is fine, but it has to be documented in your client file. Your obligations, make sure you know your client, make sure you're verifying their identity. You should be able to justify your recommendations and why the client did what they did. A completed thorough client communication log, detailed notes are absolutely key. I cannot stress how important it is to have in your files detailed notes of why you're recommending what you're recommending and why the client has chosen to go down the route that they have in terms of product selection. So I talked about this briefly in the previous slide. It's called the reason why letter. There is a lot of confusion in the industry as to when this came into play or when it's supposed to come into play. We at Canada Loyal have taken the initiative and just have said that we're going to put it out, roll it out, because there's some that have been saying this has been in play for quite some time. So I did send out a compliance bulletin a few weeks ago with regards to the reason why letter. This is a requirement. It is not an option. It's not a recommendation. It's not, it would be nice if you did it. It is a requirement. It is a letter that you send to the client after you've made the recommendation as to why you made that recommendation. So the client knows why you've recommended what you did. Now, if the client took your recommendation, it's a simple letter. You say, "Hi, Joe, just want to let you know I recommended this based on this, and you've accepted. Congratulations." Again, you can make it a marketing piece and say, "If you have any questions, let me know. Cheers." Or you can more along the lines of, if you recommended something and they decided to go with something else, that would be very simple. And you would just say at that point, "Hi, Joe, just want to let you know that I recommended this because this is what you shared with me. However, you've decided to go with this because of this reasoning." Again, turn it into a marketing piece. "Great meeting you. Looking forward to ABCD. Cheers." And then you go from there. So I have put in the compliance bulletin some standard templates for reason why letters, but you are required every single time that you sell to send out a reason why letter along with the advisor disclosure and the privacy disclosure to the client, so they understand why you made the recommendation you made and why you ended up with the product you ended up with for the client. I've actually also included that in the advisor compliance manual. I will also send out an updated advisor compliance manual following the training. So it is, what are your responsibilities as an advisor? So there's so much happening out in the industry. What is it that's required of an advisor to make sure that they're meeting their obligations? Well, there's a lot going on out there. In terms of your business practice, you need to make sure that you have your own up-to-date compliance regime. So you need to ensure you have a manual of some sort, at least policies that have the anti-money laundering policy, the privacy, and the client complaints policy at a minimum. At a minimum, you need to have 3. Again, we do have standalones, policy templates, which I will send out, but you need to ensure that you have those at a minimum in place. If you have other advisors that are working for you, you need to make sure you are monitoring their activities to ensure that they're not making any compliance infractions. You also need to ensure that if there are any regulatory inquiries or any client complaints, that you're managing your sales staff to ensure that there's no deficiencies in training and that the sales practices that they are exhibiting are of level, if not above level, as to industry standards and expectations. So that is also your responsibility. And again, FINTRAC related reviews, part of your organization, depending on how you submit the insurance policy or applications, and you have to ensure you maintain complete client files. That is so critical and pertinent. FSCO has been doing audits. FSCO does come out frequently. FSCO is looking for advisor disclosures. They're looking for advisor disclosures. They're looking for privacy disclosures. They are now looking for reason why letters. They're looking for documentation to justify recommendations. Could be anything, any notes, any forms, any templates. They are looking for all of this. So it's critical that you that you maintain complete client files with all that information. So we are required on an annual basis to obtain a Canada Loyal Code of Conduct. It is also part of the manual, of the advisor manual. I will send that out as a piece as well. So you are required to review that, sign off on it, and send it back to myself, and then we keep that on file. If there are any questions regarding the Code of Conduct or this training, please feel free to email me at mona@canadaloyal.com. Actually, before I sign off, there was one other thing I wanted to touch upon very briefly, which would be the outside business activities. I want to discuss that very briefly. We've had a handful of inquiries from insurance companies in the last year. Actually, the trend is up as to their questioning outside business activities, and more in particular to those that are full-time in the industry. You need to disclose outside business activities outside of the insurance industry. You could be a mutual fund representative, you could be a mortgage agent, you could be a Tim Hortons employee part-time somewhere. All of those are considered outside business activities, and it's crucial and critical that these are reported to myself or the insurance company through whom you do a contract, which the contracting department could help you with. But they need to be reported because they are coming down on advisors who are not reporting their outside business activities. So that was just something I wanted to put in there as well. Again, I thank you for joining me today for our annual advisor training. Again, if there are any questions, please feel free to email me at mona@canadaloyal.com. I thank you again, and till next year.